Coming up on 5 Minute News. White House to end COVID emergency on May 11th. Bolsonaro applies for 6-month visa to remain in Florida. And new grand jury examining Trump porn star hush money. It's Tuesday, January 31. I'm Anthony Davis. Joe Biden informed Congress on Monday that he will end the twin national emergencies for addressing COVID-19 on May 11, as most of the world has returned closer to normalcy nearly 3 years after the emergencies were first declared. The move to end the national emergency and public health emergency declarations would formally restructure the federal coronavirus response to treat the virus as an endemic threat to public health that can be managed through agencies' normal authorities. It comes as lawmakers have already ended elements of the emergencies that kept millions of Americans insured during the pandemic. Combined with the drawdown of most federal COVID-19 relief money, it would also shift the development of vaccines and treatments away from the direct management of the federal government. Biden's announcement comes in a statement opposing resolutions being brought to the floor this week by House Republicans to bring the emergency to an immediate end. House Republicans are also gearing up to launch investigations on the federal government's response to COVID-19, as several COVID conspiracy theorists now hold committee positions. Then President Donald Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar first declared a public health emergency on January 31, 2020, and Trump later declared the COVID-19 pandemic a national emergency that March, almost 4 months after the first discovery of the virus in China. More than 1.1 million people in the US have died from COVID-19 since 2020, according to the CDC, including about 3,700 just last week. Only 15% of Americans have received the recommended updated bivalent booster that has been offered since last fall. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has filed a request for a 6-month visitor visa to stay in the US, indicating he may have no immediate intention of returning home where legal issues await. Bolsonaro left Brazil for Florida on December 30, 2 days before the inauguration of his rival Lula da Silva. The ceremony proceeded without incident, but a week later thousands of Bolsonaro's die-hard supporters stormed the capital and trashed the top government buildings, demanding that Lula's election be overturned. Bolsonaro is being investigated for whether he had any role in inciting that uprising. It's just one of several probes targeting the former president that pose a legal headache upon his eventual homecoming, and which could strip him of his eligibility in future races or worse. For the first time in his more than 3-decade political career as a lawmaker and then as president, he no longer enjoys the special legal protection that requires any trial be held at the Supreme Court. It's been widely assumed, though not confirmed, that Bolsonaro entered the US on an A1 visa reserved for sitting heads of state. If so, he would have 30 days from the end of his presidential term to either leave the US or adjust his status with the Department of Homeland Security. In the wake of the rampage in the Brazilian capital this month, a group of 46 Democratic lawmakers sent a letter to President Joe Biden demanding Bolsonaro's visa be revoked. Prosecutors investigating the disgraced former President Donald Trump have convened a new Manhattan grand jury to hear evidence in a years-old probe into payments made to keep the adult entertainment star Stormy Daniels quiet about an alleged sexual encounter with the former president. Reports suggest witnesses started testifying before the grand jury on Monday, signaling an escalation in what Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg has alluded to as the next chapter in his office's investigation of Donald Trump. Grand juries have been convened before in New York to explore the possibility of criminal charges against Trump, but to date none have issued an indictment. The Manhattan grand jury would be the latest legal threat to Donald Trump as he ramps up his presidential campaign. A special grand jury in Atlanta has investigated whether Trump and his allies committed any crimes while trying to overturn his 2020 election loss in Georgia. Last month, the House January 6 committee voted to make a criminal referral to the Justice Department for Trump's role in sparking the violent insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The FBI is also investigating Trump's theft and storage of classified documents. The hush money investigation in New York involves payments of $130,000 to Daniels and $150,000 to former Playboy model Karen McDougal to buy their silence in the run-up to Trump's 2016 election victory. The Trump Organization was convicted last month of tax fraud and fined $1.6 million as punishment for an unrelated scheme in which top executives dodged personal income taxes on lavish job perks. You can subscribe to 5 Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5 Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5 Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.